Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Ensuring Maintenance Reliability in Your Operations. I'm Jen Getz, the Editorial Director of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by TMA Systems. Before we get started, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions via the question box at any time. There will be a Q&A portion after this presentation, so please type your questions there to send them to us. If at any time you experience a technical difficulty, please send a message to us via that question section and someone on our team will answer you privately. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your control panel. Clicking on that arrow will either expand or collapse the control panel, so please be sure the panel is expanded so you can access the question box. And if you're interested in continuing education credits, please note that you'll receive a certificate of attendance in an email from Facility Executive after this webinar. You can report to your association for the credit. Now I'll introduce your speaker. A client for 15 years and direct user of the web TMA application, Ted Willing brings a wealth of knowledge from his time at Architect of the Capitol. As the past Assistant Facility Manager of the Supreme Court of the United States, he brings real-world experience in the field of operations and maintenance. He consults with TMA about the needs of the facility managers from the client perspective. Hello, Ted, and thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, thanks, Jen. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever part of the country world that everybody is in. Like Jen said, I am Ted Willing. I've used TMA for 15 years, been familiar with many CMMS systems. The topic today is going to be ensuring maintenance reliability in your operations. And so that was me. So the agenda here is we're just going to cover broad type of information. So types of maintenance that's out there, reliability centered maintenance, RCM, operations and maintenance relationship, and taking action to improve your organization. So here we go. We got types of maintenance. Now, in the maintenance world, I'm sure there are many types that aren't listed here that are specific, very specific, but generally the world revolves around corrective maintenance. So this is the reactionary type work that we all end up doing sometime or another. When something breaks, we got to fix it. It's not always the best approach to kind of deal with knee-jerk type of situations, but it's something that we always have to do. So this type of maintenance, you got limited personnel and limited budget. The next type of maintenance is preventive maintenance. It's planned, it's well thought out. There's schedules and frequencies associated with it. So in that type, you know, you're going to be exercising valves, belt replacement, greasing. This normally takes place and gets set up with the assistance of some kind of subject matter expert or shop or trade supervisors. The third one, again, is predictive, and this is more condition based. This is monitoring the actual condition of the equipment or assets to decide what maintenance needs to be performed. I know for years in one of the organizations I worked with, we always tried to get to the predictive maintenance setup, but it just seemed like we were so busy and involved with just doing corrective and preventive, we never had the time to really get into the corrective based maintenance. You know, this is like I said, the monitoring of actual conditions. You know, we're checking runtime, we're checking filter pressure. It's all based on the condition of the piece of equipment or the system that we're dealing with. The last one is not really a maintenance strategy, but it is definitely something that is out there on a frequently basis that's used. Run to failure. It's done when the maintenance on the asset is cost prohibitive. You do that when it's not really worth the time or the money to fix it. Checking light bulbs, replacing light bulbs. You know, sometimes you just run it until it fails, unless it's It's maybe the light on the U.S. Capitol, the lights on the Statue of Liberty. You don't want those to go out. So you have a no, I'm sorry. You don't want those to go out. So you have those on a schedule of repair and maintenance for things that are like light bulbs in hallways and things like that. If they go out, it's not a big deal. So it's nothing of significant impact. So as we're moving along, I had asked for a kind of a poll question here, and the poll question for the audience would be, Jen, can you throw that up there? Or
Of course. Does your organization perform predictive maintenance? Select one of the following, yes or no. You have about 30 seconds to respond.
and again, this is kind of a FY information for me and maybe others to see how organizations are successful, or are they even doing predictive maintenance. It does take some time to get something like that set up. It takes an effort. It takes a concentrated effort.
So the results are in, and 68% said yes, and 32% said no.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, for years, like I said, for the organization I had worked in, definitely we tried to do it. We talked about it. We were on the fringes of it, but it was always a struggle. So that's good to know that majority of the people are doing it. All right, so reliability centered maintenance, RCM. It's a strategy that's kind of built at the top of the organization. Senior management really needs to be behind this. It's designed to implement on specific pieces of equipment and assets in the facility. The outcomes of a successful RCM: uptime for the equipment, it's cost effective to the organization. You have a better understanding of the tolerable risk levels, and that's when we're doing the maintenance, we're always worried about the risk. If we don't do it, what's going to happen? So having a well-built RCM, we understand that. Everybody kind of understands it from top down, but the senior management really needs to be behind that. Apologize, I'm having a slight technical difficulty with my mouse. All right, so we're back on track here. So how do we ensure maintenance reliability in your operations? To ensure the reliability, you got to understand what systems you have. The systems, electrical systems, HVAC systems, plumbing systems. There's others, and then there's the specific equipment in those systems. What's it take to operate? Plumbing, you got all the pumps, motors, you got the electric panels, HVAC stuff, you got motors, you got coils, you got VAV boxes. So you need to understand all of that type stuff to make sure your maintenance is going to be taken care of. You need to understand the customer's needs and expectations. This is really important because if a customer needs a large room pre-cooled, there's that expectation of their comfort. If the customer doesn't relay that to you, or you don't know the schedule, their expectations of comfort will be there, but in actuality, it might not happen. Another thing you need to have to ensure the maintenance is really good in your organization is a subject matter expert. Not always possible. People, budgets are limited, but if you have it, it definitely is a valuable, I'll say, tool in the toolbox. Not just the equipment that you have, not just the that you have, but that subject matter expert is valuable. And sometimes, again, you don't have it because of budget constraints. FM managers end up being that subject matter expert, but you know, if you don't have it, listen to the employees. There's all levels of employees. There's the guys that the folks that really understand the systems. There's those that just show up to work. Listen to all the employees, because they all have good feedback and understanding of what they're the eyes and ears that are out there. So it's definitely important to listen to those folks. So we kind of get into the complex relationship between the operations and maintenance sides of the house. So the operations and maintenance partnership, right? Sometimes these are the same folks that are supporting the facility. Depending on your environment and depending on your facility, operations can be the folks that are out there making the product. They're the ones producing the product. What do they want? They want to run that equipment as much as they can possibly run it. If it's a 24-hour shift, they expect that equipment to be running 24 hours a day. Maintenance side of the house, they're there to support operations. Their main goal and objective is to preserve the life of the equipment. Partnership, they might function differently at different times, but they are very dependent on each other. Operations doesn't produce the product, there's no need for maintenance. If maintenance doesn't have time or able to fix and maintain the equipment, operations wouldn't be able to run to produce the equipment, the product. So it's definitely a partnership there. There does need to be some kind of communication with each team. And so, you know, what does it take to operate as one team, you know, operations and maintenance? You got to build a strong strategy, and that strategy is built at the top of the organization with input from both teams. Joint expectations on shutdowns, procedures, production schedules. That needs to be understood at the top of the organization. You know, put communication. It is very true, because if it's built in a vacuum without the input from those teams, it's not going to be successful. You're not having a team buy-in on it. Again, we talked about risk earlier, understanding the tolerable level of risk. If a piece of equipment shuts down, what is that risk to the whole operation? And operations can be an office building. Operations can be an assembly line. Operations can be, if it's a hospital environment, you know, operating rooms aren't available because of the poor scheduling of the maintenance. So everybody needs to understand that level of risk. Then along that risk, you know, have that whole buy-in of what is the equipment that takes priority. Again, if you're in a facility where conditioned air, not just air conditioning, but the condition, you got to keep the humidities down low. You got to make sure you have all that equipment. You got to set those priorities. Everybody needs to be on the same page as far as those priorities. And then also, it doesn't hurt to have members of both teams kind of observe or be included on the other side of the house. You know, the best way you can kind of understand what it takes to do maintenance is to be part of it. You know, I've heard maintenance guys just say, I don't understand why we can't go in there and do X, Y, Z. You know, they're not using this, they're not using the area, why can't we do it? So having the operations folks in the maintenance side, not doing it from every day, but just having an understanding of what it is. And also the maintenance crews, understanding what it takes on the operations side to understand that you just can't shut down a piece of equipment to do maintenance. If it's an assembly line, if it's, again, hospital, if it's a college, to do maintenance on an auditorium. Well, there's nobody in there now. Well, suppose, in 2 hours from now, there is going to be a big audience in there. You have to be able to understand that from both sides. So, yeah, it is a team effort, and the more both sides understand, I think the better. So you got to be able to take action and improve your organization. So how are we going to do that? Knowledge is power. Information. It is very powerful to have all that information. If you're the FM, if you're any part of the facilities, to have that information. A BASnet system, a building automation system, and a CMMS, you just cannot alone replace good communication between the teams. But what it can do, and if you have one, the other, or both, and you can both of those systems provide you with an opportunity to build a comprehensive PM strategy and system. If you don't have one in place, you can use the historical data out of your CMMS or your building automation system to build that. What it also does is provide factual information, not just, oh, I think the system's, I think that elevator's been running for 2 weeks now, or anything like that. You're able to actually see the runtime on the piece of equipment, and you can turn that information and turn that into valuable information for your CMMS. With the BASnet system, the building automation system, you're able to adjust the equipment remotely. You can record those activities in your CMMS. You can have your building automation system set up where certain alarms trigger work orders in your CMMS. Again, you can do your analysis to see how many of those alarms, duration it takes to fix those alarms. You get that information out of your CMMS. It's all documented in there. Equipment failures and the resolutions. Just by documenting what went wrong really doesn't help you in the big scheme of things when you're looking at how those items were fixed. So both the CMMS and the building automation can provide that information to you. Information out of the CMMS, right? So you're able to do reports. You can look at trends, and again, it's the information that is, there's garbage in, garbage out. So make sure you get that information that's in there accurately as possible. And one of my old colleagues, he always showed work order information that, let's say the light was out in a certain office, the resolution was fixed. He had a couple technicians that would just put fixed, which gave him no indication of what the resolution was. So he'd have to take the time, go back, find out, was it a ballast? Was it a blown breaker? Was it whatever? But again, more information to allow better knowledge of what's going on in your system is very important. And after you get that, you got to review the trends. You got to adjust your PMs, your frequencies. All that together will help your organization operate more efficiently. Just having data on a report, just to have the report, really isn't helping anybody. So take that data, look at it, make sure that you understand it. If it doesn't make sense, get that information where it makes sense. And again, a lot of times it's garbage in, garbage out. If the guys aren't putting the information about the PMs, whether it's that portion is really where they can come back and tell you that you're greasing the bearings too often. With that information, you come back, you can adjust your schedules, your frequencies, and it will definitely help you not burn up equipment, won't burn up bearings by having too much grease. Overall, it'll help your organization operate more efficiently and effectively. So I kind of buzzed through it. It's one of those things. When I was building this, it was, if I get too deep, it's going to take a couple hours. If I get too short, we're going to only be at a half hour. So I know the time was limited, and if I had gone down that rabbit hole of getting too deep, the session would have gone longer. So this is my last slide here. I appreciate it. I think Jen's going to
Yes, thank you, Ted, so much for this presentation, and thank you to our attendees for sending in questions. We'll now have our Q&A portion, so if you have any other questions, please continue to submit any questions that you may have. Okay, Ted, so the first question is, how can CMMS messages be integrated to phone, like with phones or mobile devices to receive alarm notifications?
So I can specifically speak to TMA. TMA has a feature. It's called notification escalation. So when a work order comes in, if it's based on a certain priority, there's a couple different ways to do it. One, the technician will actually get notified on his phone that it is a high priority work order. Also, an email can get sent out. So on the phone, they'll get a little buzz notifying that they have a work order that is a higher priority. If that is a requirement where others need to be notified, a leaking pipe is a great example. Where I worked, water was a very bad thing. A drip was a very bad thing. So we sent blanket emails to probably 10, 15 folks, not just the mechanic that was going to fix it, but everybody, just to notify them that there was a leak in a certain area. And it could have been a whole flood, or it could have been just a drip. But everybody, that was the process, the procedure that they wanted to know. So as soon as that work order came in, it was automatic, sent to the mechanic, and it was sent to the group of folks.
Perfect, thank you. Another question that we have here is, what do you suggest needs to be done in order for more organizations to practice predictive maintenance?
Again, it comes down to, again, strictly my opinion, is upper management, senior management needs to be involved. They understand, I've seen several cases where upper management just wants to keep the lights on, and they don't understand what that actually means. And once they understand what it means, then they kind of back off and say, well, that's going to take more resources. That's going to take person A away from their normal job where they're actually dedicating trying to set up a predictive maintenance. Sadly enough, when a crisis hits, everybody always says, okay, well, we got to make sure that never happens again. So how can we do that? All right, we can do predictive maintenance. We can make sure that the elevator run times are recorded, and that we're not over PMing elevators or whatever. And unless it's done immediately while there is momentum, then it kind of falls by the wayside. So if you're able to get that senior management buy-in, then I would say act quickly. Again, like I said, it's a matter of reactionary when things go bad. It's that's when you normally catch everybody's attention. Um, so
Right, right.
that's my 2 cents.
Of course. So that actually leads well into the next question. How do you foster a stronger relationship between operations and maintenance? Does this really need to be driven by senior management?
You know, depending on the timing, um, again, just everybody's world is different. I came from a fairly large organization at the architect of the Capitol up on Capitol Hill. You know, maintenance mechanics worked second and third shift. The first shift was kind of operations. They made sure things, if they broke, they were fixed quickly. You know, you've got the different type of operators. You've got the if it's an assembly line workers, they're the operators, if you will. But just having that good understanding, and you know, a lot of times it does take management to approve when folks want to see what's on the other side of that wall. If it's, again, having that understanding at the top level to say, okay, well, you know, person one, person two, mechanic one, mechanic two, you're going to shift your time for this week, and you're going to go into the operations mode. So they can see how they actually operate. So when that maintenance is done, if it runs over, see how it's actually affecting the guys that are doing the operations. So again, just that cross pollination, if you will, of workers, that gives a little bit better understanding of both sides of the fence. You know, it goes both ways. But you know, again, I know some folks have unions, and you got to give the union, you know, X number of weeks notice before you change anybody's schedule, whether they want to do it or not. So it does take a little bit of work. It does take management, because you are pulling somebody off of one shift and putting them on another shift. So that work may or may not be getting done. So it's an overall buy-in from everybody.
Of course, of course. Another question we have here is, how do you know what needs to run to fail?
So that's the communication. That's where there is an understanding of your systems. You know, like I said, the light bulb is kind of a good example. If you have a hallway, where I came from, all the light bulbs were checked every day in the hallway. Pretty excessive, but
Yeah.
that's the way it was done. I thought it was excessive because as soon as that electrician turned his back, a light bulb could go out. So they checked them every day. So if they saw light bulbs that were out, they would replace them. I had a coworker that used to use the analogy is if his headlight went out, if his one headlight went out, he would replace both of them. And he did that because the life expectancy of a headlight is X. So if one went out, pretty soon the other one's going to go out. So that was his idea of fixing it, running it to failure instead of, I'm sorry, that was his example of not running it to failure. So the lights in the hallway, once you have a brand new building, once that first light goes out, in theory, they're all going to go out relatively soon after because they all have their life expectancy. But instead of replacing them all, you run them to failure. So, you know, the same thing could be with valves. You know, if it's a small valve that doesn't really matter if it gets stuck, you don't go PMing that valve on a regular basis. If the stem gets stuck, It's not a big deal. You can cut it out and put a new valve in there, versus having that valve exercised on a regular basis. It's just not feasible to do that.
Perfect. One other question we have is, what advice might you have for strategies on, really how to understand your customers' needs?
Communication. So I came from, like I said, I had architect of the Capitol, and we had so many different types of customers. When there was a big hearing, we made sure communication. We made sure that they told us, yes, next Thursday there's going to be a meeting. There's going to be 400 people in this room. So other than that, we would have just maintained the temperature as 70 degrees, but we pre-cooled the room, so we got the room chilly. So once the lights went on, once you had the body heat in there, it was going to raise. So their expectations were that they were going to have comfort for majority. We explained to them, the room was going to be chilly when you first walked in. However, after you had more people in there, the lights went on, it was going to be comfortable. So getting the client, getting the customer, understanding what their expectations are is key. Again, like I said, the water issue, when I was in the Library of Congress, old books. The expectation was, all hands on deck if there's a drip anywhere, because water and old books don't go well. So
But they don't.
that was the expectation that we had from the client, and we made sure our system was set up so that we did have all hands on deck.
Yeah, of course, of course. So one of the final questions we have here is, how can one track ongoing work orders and, choose which system to rely on?
Ask that question again, because I don't think I quite heard it, or maybe I didn't understand it.
Of course. How can one track work orders and choose which system to use?
All right, so I think that's a great question. I'll tell you from my perspective, I had seen several different systems. If we're talking about systems as in a CMMS, you track it with the CMMS. You track again, just your corrective work orders, your service type work orders, your PM. So you're tracking it, just the day-to-day operations portion of it. But as far as selecting a type of system, this goes to knowing your organization. There's, I always draw analogies on things. If you need a pickup truck to haul something, you don't need a dump truck. So if you're a small organization, you don't need to buy a multi-million-dollar system with every bell and whistle. You need to be able to get a system that's scalable, where the base portion of it handles what you are currently doing, and certainly allows growing a little bit. So, when I back years ago, I selected TMA for Architect of the Capitol. It was based on that. Other places I've been, we had it was pushed on us. So here's your system, and everybody was like, well, it doesn't do what we want. We just need these basics, and it was a struggle to try to fit a square peg in a round hole. So if you're out there looking for a system now, understand, do your research. Certainly do your research, and look at what you actually need. There'll be your fringe players that want a full-blown automated system with GIS and everything like that. Well, if it's that one person in your organization and 99% of your organization is never going to use that, don't focus in on that. You're never going to find 100% fit. Take the 90%, take the 95%, and grow into it. If you're trying to look for 100% fit that does everything you possibly want it to do, as in price, as in functionality, accessibility, that's going to be beyond a needle in a haystack, because everybody in your organization is going to have their own way or thought of looking at a system if you're out in the process of procuring. So, really understand your organization. If you don't do materials, if you don't track materials, there's no sense focusing on a system that has the greatest material tracking system in the world, because you don't do it. So there's no sense paying extra for that feature if you don't need it. So definitely find a system that's out there that's scalable, and offers a lot of features at the base level, but not 100% of what you need. Allow that to be an extra, again, scalable application. That's my 2 cents.
Perfect. One other question we have here is, how can you track the tools used by technicians for maintenance jobs?
So again, I'm going to speak specifically to TMA. In TMA, there is a tool tracking portion of it. You can assign tools, you can assign material to each work order. You can have it where if you have a tool bag, if you will, if all your mechanics have the same tools, that is a bag, and that's assigned to them, a cart, if you will. If it is a bigger ticket item where you don't necessarily want it to walk, or if it does walk, you need to know who had it last, you can assign you can assign tools to mechanics. The supervisor can do it. Any person that's assigned with that authority, they can assign that tool to a mechanic to use. And even in that case, you can monitor the use of that tool. So if you have we'll say a jackhammer, if you're doing, type of outside construction work or internal, if you're always assigning that same jackhammer out to everybody, and you have another one sitting over there in the corner, you're tracking the usage of it, right? The runtime of it. So you can, again, specifically with TMA, you have those tools, you build that toolkit, and that can be assigned out to the mechanics. You can have them electronically sign it out, so there is a proof. You can have them sign it back in. Again, depending on what your need is. And when we were looking at a system years ago, that wasn't even a thought process, 15, 20 years ago. But as time went by, okay, we start noticing some tools just seem to grow legs and end up missing. So we started tracking the mechanics, what they had, when it was used. You can track how long they had it out there. So you use the CMMS system as a tool for yourself to manage every portion of your day-to-day operations, materials, labor, tools, anything like that.
Perfect. We have about one or two final questions here. How do you recommend organizations help their employees and staff get more accustomed to CMMS systems when they're first implemented?
So visual training guides, what I did was I had a cheat sheet, and it was in the neighborhood of, well, it was in the neighborhood of maybe 3 or 4 inches wide. Okay, I'm dating myself here. It was always on paper. So it was 3 or 4 inches wide, about, I don't know, 10 inches long. And we had the basic things that the employees used. If they were technicians, how to open up a work order, post the time on the work order. And we made these cheat sheets with step 1, 2, 3, 4. It was very visual for them, laid out specifically what their tasks were. If it was to post time, there was one of those, you flipped it over, it showed you how to post your time. We're in the process of upgrading right now one of the clients, and it's a big push to train over 1,000 people. So what we're doing now is we're having those cheat sheets available, mostly online. But if you can have some kind of a virtual session to, again, specific to their job, if they're a mechanic, you want them to be able to open up a work order, you need them to post their time. If you want to track their material that's used, to show them how to go to a storeroom, scan out, if it's all mobile devices, to scan out that piece of equipment where you get the total cost of ownership, or the total cost of that work order being done. You provide that visual training to them. Also, you keep it up there, accessible to them. So if they're back in their break room, or if they're back there in the shop, and that conversation pops up, supervisor can say, hey, well, let's take a half hour and look at this video. TMA offers tons of videos on each module, on each step of the process. So they're very generic, but it's a visual tool. So it gives the mechanic, again, that's mostly the boots on the ground. They're the ones that you need proper information. You need those folks trained. White collar workers, a lot of times they can pick up on things, a lot of times, but having that easily accessible information where it's not a, behind the door, you have to have the combination just to get in to get any information. You want to make it accessible as possible to them. That's how I would do it.
Perfect. And it looks like we have time for one final question. So, okay, it says, can organizations make any mistakes when it comes to predictive maintenance, and how can they avoid? If so, how can they be avoided?
Sure. Yes. You can make you make the mistakes with doing any type of work. What I would say is, again, you have your O&M manuals, your operations and maintenance manuals from the factory, from the manufacturer. That is their best case. That's the way they want you to do the maintenance. However, in reality, that's not always the case. So you just don't have the time and manpower to do it the way the manufacturer wants you to do it. So if you're moving to the predictive side of the house, if you're monitoring the systems and you're getting the reports that say this needs to be done, if you set those tolerances in there, that after 1,000 hours you need to do PM on it, and your system indicates that you're running up to 1,000 hours, and that's what you have designed to do the predictive maintenance at 1,000 hours. After a couple of those, again, listen to the technicians and the mechanics that are actually doing it. They can come back and say, wow, that was really close because that bearing needed grease about 300 hours ago. You say, okay, well, you adjust. You move that measuring stick back to 700 hours. So next time something that needs to be running, 700 hours, you make sure you do the PM on it prior to hitting that mark. So I've not found any foolproof way of making sure you don't make mistakes. You can spend, and I've seen this a lot of times, an organization will spend days and days and weeks trying to perfect it. Meanwhile, they're not doing anything. Then they think they have it perfected, but then it gets out there, you start operating, and you have to readjust. So there's nothing wrong with readjusting based on your conditions, based on your equipment. We used to do preventive maintenance on the grounds, the lawn. So your information says you got to fertilize in the Washington, D.C. area, you got to fertilize April 1st. Well, if you've got a late snow, you got long frost, you're not going to do it April 1st. You're going to have to push that off. That's predictive, right? You're predicting that April 1st, that's when we're going to be doing it. But in reality, you got to push it off sometimes. So there's nothing wrong with readjusting your expectations on a really good built system. So mistakes are inevitable, but you need to be able to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and I imagine it takes just some trial and error to find the sweet spot for your organization
Yep.
when it comes to predictive maintenance. Well, awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Ted, for this presentation today.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, everybody who attended. Hopefully it was informative.
Yes, thank you to all attendees for sending in questions. Thank you to all attendees for sending in questions and for attending our presentation today. A recording from today's session will be made available on our magazine's website, facilityexecutive.com. Thank you and have a great afternoon.